The young Tobin family is on the verge of bankruptcy after Dwight bets everything they own on several failed stock trades. They are far from the life Sherry imagined for her family. And to add to their stress, Sherry has just given birth to their third child. Dwight makes another gamble. He decides to move his family to Denver so he can earn his MBA. He looks for a job at a bank to tide him over.
Dad landed the job in Denver, and then they really made some changes and said, hey, let's give everybody a fresh start, and us a fresh start, and the kids, and and everything about moving to Denver was right.
Sherry didn't feel the same way. She's less certain about leaving behind family and friends.
My mom struggled with that. She was leaving everything she ever knew.
In 1991, after graduating from business school, Dwight has a new plan.
My dad, he never could sit still, so it was kind of like his wheels were turning of how could I make money.
A toast?
He launches a leasing firm called Tobin & Company. They provide lease-to-own deals for organizations like schools or fire stations that can't qualify for a mortgage with a bank.
He was the middleman. He set up the deal. He handled the funds transfer and so on. So basically for a small percent of the whole deal, and some of these deals could be worth $1 million.
Within a few short years, business is booming. Dwight's business savvy is paying off, and they're soaring to new financial heights. For the first time since being on the brink of disaster, the family has finally arrived.
After he got that degree, life changed a lot. They built their first home, truly from the ground up, 3,000 square feet with a basement, a dream home that, anybody would love to have. We all had our own bedroom, that was a huge thing.
The Tobins spare no expense on their children.
She would buy them whatever they needed, whatever they wanted, and however they wanted it, as fast as soon as it came out of their mouth, it was there.
Here comes the first one, all right? You ready? Are you ready? Sure? Okay, good.
Dwight's new financial security allows him to spend a lot of quality time with the children.
He could set his own hours quite a bit, so it came in real handy. And Dwight coached a girls' softball team for a while, the one that his daughter was on, and then so they had to buy a large SUV to transport the softball team around.
When his kids shined, he was just on cloud nine. He was ecstatic. I mean, very proud parent.
Earning close to $500,000 a year, the Tobins revel in their newfound wealth. The family is overwhelmed with this spectacular change in fortune.
It was the perfect family of 5.
How are you guys enjoying?
The Tobins seem happier than ever.
It was a great example of what I wanted to be like, what I wanted my marriage, what I wanted my future family to be like.
And we just, I think we should go right
They
into it.
don't just enjoy the money, they enjoy the status.
Thanks a lot for coming again, guys.
Thank you. The Tobin's leasing.
My theory on that with most people is, especially those that grew up without a lot, is kind of a validation of the world. Look at me, I made it. I'm really important now because I've got all this stuff.
Sherry liked a lot of the good things in life. The way it came across when I met her is that she always had that taste for one step up.
Sherry wants to play her part in shoring up the family's new position. She decides to get her real estate license in order to increase their income.
I think she always wanted more. I think maybe they both always wanted more. More money is better.
Sherry is feeling a great deal of stress because she fears that the money is going to go away again. So part of what's starting to happen is she's trying to do everything that she can to gain control.
Another thing that happens sometimes is when one spouse supports the ambition of the other and the other becomes successful. The one who was sort of in the support role can sometimes want to share more of the credit.
I thought I told you about this a month ago.
The family believes that Sherry is pushing Dwight too hard.
She was kind of just, making sure things were done. Double checking with them. Did you take care of this? Did you take care of that? And she was really on top of him. He'd get a little irritated and kind of just tell her to back off and, let me do my business.
Sharon, can I take a minute of your time, please?
Others feel they are both equally compelled to achieve greater success and are pushing each other forward.
My sense was that he was driven himself. Now, she may have put pressure on him, but he was very driven and very competitive. I'd almost describe him as a little bit controlling too. I mean, he was never in the military, but he acted like a drill sergeant once in a while.
Okay, good.
Yes.
I've got other things to take care of. I don't want to come back and these aren't done.
I know he always seemed to be a little frustrated that she was not catching on to things as quickly as he thought. If it was paperwork, if it was taking care of something with a business, he always wanted her to do it and would get frustrated if she didn't do it and do it on time.
I've had many successful guys in business tell me over the years that at some point they felt like their wives and sometimes even their kids also saw them as just sort of ATM. Seems to me like those guys blame their relentless pursuit of financial success on the family, when the real truth is that's probably more like the reason why that man and that woman found each other in the first place, because they shared that ambition.
The years go by, the kids leave home, and the couple grows old together. And after 28 years of marriage, Sherry has not lost any of her desire to make money. In 2003, Dwight is surprised when Sherry confesses that she's mismanaged one of her real estate accounts in order to accelerate a deal.
Okay.
Sherry has her real estate license revoked.
Yeah.
I think she tried to kind of double dip on one end of the deal and double dip on the other end of the deal. I think she found ways of, hey, I don't have to do that. I can leave this out, and then, make the money quicker and faster. Now that we've got a taste of it, how do we keep that? Because they obviously both enjoyed it.
The Tobines love nothing more than a fresh start, and Dwight claims to see a great opportunity in Arizona real estate.
And the housing market there was booming here in Phoenix, so why not roll into an even bigger home, another bigger dream home?
Or maybe Dwight and Sherry just want to scrub clean their blemished reputation.
Actually, I have suspicions since then that she really wanted to get out of Denver because I think she'd burned some bridges in Denver with people, and this seemed like an opportunity to make a new start somewhere and where nobody knew her, and she could start over and impress people.
And that's exactly what they do, settling down in the exclusive gated community of Gilbert, Arizona. But the calm of their desert oasis is interrupted by a startling telephone call, a call that throws the entire marriage into chaos and fear. By 2003, Sherry and Dwight Tobine are sunning themselves in the warm and exclusive neighborhood of Gilbert, Arizona. It seems like a good place to get away from the embarrassment of Sherry's real estate trouble.
To the success of the business.
And Dwight continues getting more work than he can handle.
I felt like they were at a really, even a higher peak than they were when they were in Denver. He always said he'd get her a dream car, and she always wanted a Blue Jag, and they got a Blue Jag.
They are the talk of their friends and family back home in Kansas.
It was a one-story, sprawling ranch. You walk in, you saw their piano, you saw their formal dining room with a huge backyard.
Dwight is enjoying a couple of extras himself.
He also started getting toys of ATVs and things like that.
For a few years, I was a little bit envious. I thought, well, I'd like to have some of those nice things too.
But after 3 years of uninterrupted success with Sherry at the helm, Dwight, out of the blue, starts receiving alarming phone calls from clients. They're asking very strange questions.
I don't know where you get that. I'm fine. Listen, I'm just going off to golf. I'll phone you back.
He started getting calls from people asking him, how are you doing? I heard you were in the hospital. And he couldn't figure out what this was about.
Finally, he figures it out. His wife's been telling clients that he's seriously ill.
She was telling people that, you know, he was hurt or he had a heart attack and he's been in the hospital.
His wife has been lying to his clients. But why?
I just can't find the
Bewildered, Dwight takes a closer look at the company business. He discovers missing cash from several accounts. Approximately $50,000.
He was pretty shook up, and he couldn't believe it. He was pretty disgusted.
Sherry,
Yes.
stop that bullshit!
Dwight is furious. But Sherry tells him that she withdrew the money from the business to pay for family expenses.
Well, Sherry seems to be doing some externalization, and these are things that we see typically with people whose designs haven't worked out and who are now looking culpable in some way and trying to explain themselves.
But knowing the way Dwight is, part of what I'm thinking is that he's probably upset with himself, thinking, I should have been watching, I should have been paying attention. You know, Sherry's a good person, she's on my side, and maybe this was all sort of accidental.
Dwight was not paying attention, and he's about to realize the situation is worse than anyone imagined. One afternoon, the family receives a series of alarming messages from Sherry.
Sent us a random text messages that were like, I love you.
She hasn't been seen for hours, so Dwight searches the neighborhood.
He couldn't find her. He didn't know what was going on. He was trying to find her, and we were trying to find them.
God, Sherry!
Dwight finds her unconscious at a neighbor's home, next to an empty bottle of pills.
She pretty much told him when they were in the ambulance what was going on and what she was going to kill herself because she couldn't handle it anymore, and she's done a lot of bad things, and, you know, the list went on and on and on.
I couldn't.
He got her to, you know, the hospital. They got her an ambulance and got her over there and pumped her stomach, and she was fine.
But their financial situation is not fine. Sherry confesses that they are in debt to the tune of over $1 million. Everything Dwight has spent years building up has come crashing down.
I remember sitting with him in the waiting room when all this was going down with my mom, and he's explaining all this to me. His head's down, and he's just had tears, like, you know, like, how can this be? Like, you know, it was just numb. Like, I've built this empire, I've given her a dream. You know, how could it be just ending?
Dwight Tobine's wife, Sherry, admits to draining their bank accounts. Over $1 million is missing. Everything he's worked for and earned over a lifetime is suddenly gone.
It was tearing him up that, you know, he had this beautiful home office in Phoenix, but now this home office had turned into, I'm living here in Scottsdale in this little condo thing, and, you know, it pretty much, that was a train wreck.
At least Sherry and Dwight are able to enjoy their family after their daughter Jennifer gives birth to her first child, Cody.
They were kind of stepping into some new roles as grandparents, and so they're having a little fun with that, which was good. Gave them a little bright spot from all this craziness that was happening with them.
Dwight tries to repair some of his business accounts by selling his home.
At one time, he thought he could get $1 million out of the house. At one time, he probably could have.
He was trying to save a little bit of everything, I think. I think he was trying to just kind of get things in a spot where he could control them.
Sherry and Dwight have been together for a very long time. They came together with shared values. They have kids together. So it makes total sense to me that they're still trying to make it work. They've overcome things before in the past, and they're going to do what they can to overcome things today.
At some level, Dwight probably feels at this point at least complicit, if not responsible for, some of the choices that Sherry's made. And so he may feel that it's unfair to lay the blame entirely upon her at this point.
I have told you everything.
As it turns out, Sherry has not only run the business into the ground, she's also committed fraud. And in early 2009, the FBI opens an investigation into Tobine and Company.
And as he dug in more and more and more, it just escalated, and it just seemed like it steamrolled, and it was out of control faster than you can imagine.
Some of the banks just filed civil suits to start the ball rolling. And he actually negotiated his way out of those and paid something back. But this one that turned into such a huge deal, there was no negotiation over that because it was a federal offense at that point.
Dwight and Sherry's relationship plummets into a dark chasm. The months pass. There's still no phone call from Dwight. He even fails to show up after Jennifer gives birth to her second child.
I wanted to call and say what's going on, and I couldn't get a hold of him, and I didn't know, and his phone was acting funny at that point. And I remember calling my grandma and telling her there was something in her voice that said, "There's something wrong with your dad. There's something wrong."
Jennifer Carmichael's father has been missing for 2 years after her parents' marriage ends in financial disaster. Desperate to locate him, she files a missing persons report.
In your dumpster.
Investigators immediately bring Sherry in for questioning. By all appearances, she seems like a timid and confused grandmother.
So I was depressed.
But when Sherry explains the gun to police, she makes a surprising confession.
I bought the gun because I wanted to commit suicide.
They were in the bedroom, and she came in with the gun. She was going to kill herself, and he tried to grab it out of her hands. The gun went off, accidentally went off, and grazed him in the arm. She said he wrapped up his arm and then left in his truck, and that was the last time she saw him.
After a grueling 10 hours of interrogation, with each retelling, her story changes. Finally, Sherry admits that her husband was fatally shot in the struggle.
She gave 4 different versions of how that happened, but she admitted to accidentally shooting him and then abandoning his body in the desert.
Sherry also admits to communicating with the family, pretending to be Dwight, to make it seem as though he was still alive. And the reason, says Sherry, for keeping up the charade is that she was worried no one would believe her story. So she kept her husband's body in the freezer for a month before finally disposing of it.
She wrapped the body up and drug it out to the garage, and then later disposed of it in the desert, is what she told us that day.
She also makes a reference to cleaning up the blood after Dwight was shot.
She made weird comments to us. It's not clean unless it's bleach clean.
And I remember after that interview on the 14th, we took her out to the desert. She was going to show us where she dumped the body.
She made weird comments. You know, if we did find the body, do you think the animals or the coyotes would have done anything to the body? At the time, it was an odd statement, like, what does she mean by that? We drove her out to the location and we searched around there. We couldn't find anything because it wasn't there.
Even without a body, investigators arrest Sherry for the death of her husband on the charge of first-degree murder. The family is stunned by Sherry's confession.
My first reaction was, disbelief. It was more of like, please don't let this be happening.
First, it was like, are you talking about my mom? Seriously? Like, the gal that doesn't like to, pick up dog poop. It was a whirlwind of emotions. It was an anger that I couldn't describe. I was angry with my mother because how could she do this? How could she do this to her family that they had built together?
The cops are not convinced that the shooting was an accident, but in order to prove their suspicions, they need to locate Dwight's body. And before long, they find what they're looking for. The results are beyond disturbing. Several nearby counties have reported body parts appearing at the side of the road over the Christmas holidays, discovered by people stopping for a rest break.
A left leg was recovered out in Pinal County. A couple days later, in the north part of Maricopa County, north of Phoenix, the right leg was discovered. About 100 miles west of Phoenix, a complete torso was recovered. And I said, well, what, can you give me a little description as to the race, the height, the weight? And I'm listening to him tell me this, and that's the exact description of Dwight Tobine.
Detective Hugh Lockerbie is able to confirm the match with a DNA swab from Dwight's parents. How can Sherry possibly explain her husband's dismembered body? Police conclude that she murdered her husband in cold blood and brutally disposed of his remains in an attempt to conceal his identity.
She did, take a lot of effort to disguise and, get rid of the head, hands, and feet, which we've never been able to recover. The person who did this was obviously very motivated, making sure that this person was completely unidentifiable. Some of these body parts were basically very forcefully removed, not just a clean cut with a saw, not a sight that a lot of people want to look at.
Multiple methods were used. Different parts had different marks on them. They told us that they believed a reciprocating blade type of saw was used on some parts.
I was sickened. I was just like, you've just taken what you think is the worst and you've made it worse. You've made it unconscionable.
It is a rare occasion that you would find a woman, albeit an older woman, that would murder someone and then dismember them in such a graphic and horrific fashion. However, there are a lot of sociopaths that literally lie dormant. As long as they're getting what they need and they're being fed in the way that they want to be fed, everything's fine.
The fact that Sherry's a grandma at this point is actually illustrative of the fact that you cannot just spot a sociopath. There's nothing about being a grandma, there's nothing about being older that makes those sociopathic traits go out of a person.
As Sherry would not benefit financially through Dwight's death, investigators believe the only reason she killed him is because she couldn't face a divorce. Sherry pleads guilty to avoid the possibility of being sentenced to death at trial. On May 19, 2012, Sherry Tobine is sentenced to life in prison, plus 31 additional years for fraud-related charges.
She pled and sentenced all on the same day, which was a bit rare, but she agreed to plead guilty to first-degree murder. They felt that that was the best course of action, and she didn't want the death penalty.
Most of Dwight's remains are still missing.
I think that's probably the thing that bothers me the most, is not being able to give closure to the family.
The death has torn the Tobine siblings apart. They now only speak to each other through a lawyer.
It's made it very hard between the three of us. I think we're all deeply hurt on some level. We're all in a different place with our grief.
The family is still grappling with the horrific loss.
Every day you think about it, I relive that. I relive the fact of when my wife heard the news. It's bad.
I think the hardest thing was what it did to my dad. He didn't live long enough to see her punished. He was denied that opportunity to have contact with his son for the rest of his life.
I feel like he's doing God's work now, and that's important. That's huge. Even though I miss him so much.